With me today is Mr. Wade Lightheart, co-founder and president of BiOptimizers, a digestive and health optimization company. Wade, welcome to the Rest and Recovery Podcast.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks for having me, and delighted to talk about this topic, which is really close to my heart. I've had some experiences in that. So
yeah, I'd like to dig into that a little bit. So how does one start a digestive health company? Like, what is the kind of Genesis 1-1, so to speak, story?
Well, I think first and foremost, my background was a personal trainer, and as it was my business partner, we're both sports nutritionists, exercise physiologists, who were primarily focused on aesthetics and performance, him in around mixed martial arts and myself around the bodybuilding world. And I had some success in the bodybuilding world and capturing a number of national titles and eventually competing at the Mr. Universe. And my first trip to the World Championships in 2003, when I got done with that, I had a complete digestive breakdown. I gained 42 pounds of fat and water in 11 weeks. So I went from Mr. Universe to Mr. Marshmallow because the performance-based diet and training program had pushed my body into extreme burnout, both internally and externally. Mm-hmm. And on the internal side, once I got done, my body was trying to capture the fat, which really resulted in a lot of weight gain. And because I was on calorie deprivation for 11 months and all this sort of stuff and training at an insane level and all that stuff. And I met a doctor, and he taught me, he had helped rebuild people from the inside out.
Okay.
And he was talking about enzymes and probiotics and the transfer of food and what was right and all these sort of things that no one was talking about 20 years ago. And he was the picture of health. He was like in his 70s. He was literally the poster guy that you would want to be when you were 70. He was lively. He was energetic. He was strong. He was vibrant. He was cognitively just laser sharp. And I'm like, wow, obviously this guy knows something you want. And I went to him and said, well, I don't get it. What's going on here? I got the best coach. I've got Spartan discipline. I've been recognized at the aesthetic ideal of the world. And somehow I'm not missing something. He says, and he taught me, he said, Wade, you've learned to build a body from the outside in. I'll teach you how to build a body from the inside out. And I followed his program and started transforming my digestive health. And within 6 months, not only did I recapture my physique, but I recaptured my health and experienced a new level. And from there, Matt and I started a company. We coached about 15,000 people on some of these processes to help high performance athletes avoid the same problems that we had run into. And then I had a holistic health clinic in Vancouver, and then we rebranded the company as BiOptimizers a few years later because we're really into human optimization. And we were always about human optimization from an aesthetics and performance side, but then we incorporated the health side of it as well, especially as we got older and into our middle age, and you start to realize you want to live long as well as live strong. And it's maybe whether you can extend your lifespan or not is still unknown, but we're pretty confident that we can extend the quality of our life until the expiry date comes, and maybe we can extend it as well. So we've concentrated a lot on those areas. And so we started in digestion, we moved to nervous system, and then to brain optimization, which are the areas of degeneration that happens when one starts to burn out. And burnout there's a slow burnout called aging. And then there's a fast burnout, which is called some sort of physiological or mental or emotional crisis, usually due to an inability to recover from the demands that one has put on themselves in your life. And I experienced that again as an entrepreneur about 3-4 years ago. I was running 3 companies. I had worked 2 years. I was traveling all over the world, and I worked 2 years straight. I didn't take a day off. And I remember sitting on the couch one day saying, I'm thinking watching of half a game of the NFL. What my plan, and it was a playoff game. I was like, I want a half a game. I think I can do that. And feeling guilty. And my girlfriend at the time says, wait, there's something wrong here if you're feeling guilty to watch an hour and a half of football. Something's really off here. And I realized that. But I had gotten so locked into this outcome that I was willing to do whatever it took to get there. And that burned me out. I did a brain test. My brain electrical energy was like a 75-year-old man. My nervous system was shot from using stimulants and stuff to keep myself going. And my emotional state, I would say, was less than amicable. And so I made some lifestyle changes, and I also started adding super physiological dosages of magnesium, which corrected the condition in a few months.
Wow, that's an amazing story. You hit on like 6 things. One, register with me to some degree on the burnout in what seems culturally a systemic thing.
Yes.
Culturally, just corporately, especially, and I'm sure more for you on the entrepreneur, but even in corporate America, where the water cooler talk was the 2 a.m. Hey, look what I did, got up at 5, and you could probably port that in just about any other demographic for success or high performance. So you mentioned stimulants, and that's one thing I had recently in my mind, where whenever we're trying to work on our health or produce energy, it is always the gin up the system rather than kind of fix the baseline to build from. Does that make sense?
Well, there's levels to the game and how a person wants to approach it. So you can look at a variety of different parameters. And we've written a book recently called From Sick to Superhuman, which helps identify 10 different factors which people can look at and get data components to specialize. What typically happens is we start at kind of broad-based ideologies, which are blanket coverage over a wide segment of the population and doesn't account for individual genetics, nervous system development, internalized capabilities, cognitive capacity, mutations, stimulations from the environment, hormonal capabilities, widespread or micro deficiencies around nutrients and predispositions for conditions, as well as energetic or electrical nervous system capacity. And so all of those things are going to kind of culminate in leading a person to a burnout. So what might burn out one person would be low output for another. And what happens in the world of giving information out is it runs on a bell curve. And so the people where you've nailed how many of those points that were right, or maybe singular points that was the deciding factor for that individual, become the raving fan and the one that gives the testimonial that you read on the website. Right. The person where that was actually the counter ingredient or system or methodology to go, they're the one that starts the haterade parade against you. And then they move on and fall victim to the same claim, because they continue on, they find what was the quote unquote cure for their situation. Right. They become an advocate of that, which in many cases appears to be the polar opposite of the original remedy. And then you have a tribalism that emerges on media, and the tribes chieftains who advocate this and slam the other, and this is proliferated into the digital universe, leaving the individual severely confused as to which methodology is appropriate for them. And so what I would say is, what's the beauty of this situation, and one of the things that I advocate, is we now have the capabilities as an individual to get extremely granular on the tests that we can apply to ourselves, and to be able to source out a functional medicine practitioner that will be able to, number one, initiate the testing and initiate customized results for you, the individual, that allows you to completely manage your internal state and your capability to perform in the outside world. And that's what I ended up doing. And I can say I knew about a lot of it, but when you're pushed, and you're going back to your original question, how did you get started in this business? Well, generally the best companies are built by people who had a problem themselves and they needed it solved. And so I had a digestive health problem, I had a nervous system problem, I have a cognitive problem, I had a work problem. So I had to solve all those problems, and it turns out they were the problems for a lot of people. And then so we provide insights, tools, education, and resources, as well as products, in order to support that journey for other people.
Well, so that was a little bit of information.
Correct. I speak in gusts, so my apologies for that.
No problem. So break it down. Like, how do we boil? And I think that's part of the thing too in the culture, is where you've got we mentioned already the burnout culture and,
Yep.
and advocating no rest and no recovery. And then the things that you eat are advocated by organizations all for profit, but often aren't really healthful foods. They're just fillers. How do you reclaim that when there is so much information out there, and people even in the space you're in turn into like political debates of either or rather than this continuum to just advocate for health?
Correct. And I think first and foremost, as soon as you enter into the WWW world in form of a debate, you are entering into an opportunity cost situation that you're not able to recognize. The surface level communications that is going to transpire in those conditions likely will not give you a return on your time investment from the standpoint, you're not going to get granular into what is causing the burnout in your own life.
Yeah.
So what you get, and I think the first principle of looking at burnout is recognizing that we've become a voyeuristic culture.
Mm-hmm.
That we've not are participating in our life. We are observing life under the guise of participation. So I'm scrolling through social media, I'm on YouTube, I'm on a forum, I'm on whatever these things in the thing. And I'm getting a feedback, a dopamine loop, which is designed through nature through the cultivation of a reward mechanism to develop neurological connections for, say, throwing a spear better or picking better berries. These were survival mechanisms that the brain has so that we could repeat behaviors that led to health. What's interesting about the digital world is that we get the cognitive experience that we know something, but that's the difference. It's the application of where the dopamine loop should be built.
Yeah.
The new behavior. So what we want to concentrate on is behavior modification. And if you go to a book by James Clear, which is very timely, called Atomic Habits.
Love that book.
And so if let's evaluate a burnout. When I got into burnout, keep in mind, I have a geneticist. I have an epigenetic expert. I have hormone experts, natural. I'm very well researched in this area, but I still led to this. Why? Okay, well, I had to assess, why did I get into this situation? Number one, I'm not leveraging all the tools that I have available. Number two, I'm spending a disproportionate amount of time on the performance side of thing and not enough time on rest and recovery. Mm-hmm. Because what's happened, I've become a victim of my own success. And what it is I was able to function on 4, 5, 6 hours sleep. I was able to travel the world in planes and deal with different time zones and multiple companies. I had become so good at performance that and artificially enhancing my performance with the various tools on the positive side. I was a disproportionate amount of energy was going in that area and not enough on the recovery aspects of my emotional and my psychological. So my performance psychology became almost a defense mechanism, a rationalization for things that I didn't want to pay attention to, whether that's aging or economic benefit or social status or whatever reasons we end ourselves up into burnout.
Yeah, the driver.
Yeah, we want to be partner in the group. We want to make $100 million. We want to be super dad or super mom for the kids.
Yeah.
We want to be the number one on the organizations that we're a participant on. We want to be great in our education system. Whatever we've created as an identification with that's really emotionally impactful, that we want to rise to the highest levels. The consequence of that is the higher or the more that you push towards something or achieve to something, the more likely you are susceptible to the consequences of that result. So there is the acquisition of the outcome, the goal, the direction, the status, whatever that is. But consequently, there's going to be some other area of your life that is going to suffer. And I think that if we look at our lives objectively and determine what it is that we want to do and how, what we're willing to do and how we want to identify or be in the world, which I think is great. But let's also do a cost benefit analysis. What's the cost benefit? Where are the potential areas where things could go wrong? And that's where we need tight feedback loops with our family members, with our business partners, and with our healthcare practitioners. And if we line those check-ins with those people on a regular basis and have some sort of mechanism of monitoring that, we will not enter into burnout, because, you know, your partner's going to say, hey, Wade, you know what? I've noticed you're a little crabby than lately. You know, your business partner's going to say, you know, I noticed you're dropping the ball a little bit here. Maybe you're overcommitted. Your health guy is saying, hey, you know what? Your triglycerides are up. Your deep sleep is not where it should be. And these little indicators that you can kind of bypass on the way to success now become, you know, checkpoint Charlies to say, hey, you know what? Why don't we turn off the gas, or why don't we spend a little bit more time in recovery? So now I literally have a biohacking house in my house.
Yeah.
I've got beds, I've got machines, I've got devices, I've got a commitment to my meditation, my process. I dropped one of my businesses that I was doing and really peeled back my life. And what's interesting is life is better than ever. And I think for your listeners, they have to recognize that it's going to be better, and you're going to perform better if you do the things that you're not willing to give yourself out of some sort of martyrisk kind of mentality, that you want to become a martyr for the goal. And I think high performers are striver type mentalities and oftentimes martyr themselves unconsciously. So,
yeah. Well, and I think, you know, a lot of what you said can resonate with me a bit with my own burnout and experience where, and I do this still. I feel like I just did it again, where I'm trying to do all the things at once, and they're all good things, but the hard part is to discern which of those things to peel off, and that can be delayed, and which of those things are going to, and maybe never even get to. But which are the things that are going to fulfill you? And you know, some of it sounds like too, for me, as I look back, was what was my key driver? Was I chasing or pursuing something? And I think there's a difference in the two, and the heart of the matter of that is to me, the way I look at the pursuing, there's an internal intrinsic value that you're going to get when you achieve it, but it's for, I'll say, righteous means, right? You're doing it and it connects with you. But if you're chasing, there's an external driver. You're doing it for someone else, some kind of validation or whatever. Anyway, that's something that I've been wrestling with, and I still kind of do this herky jerky with trying to overconsume at times, doing, again, the good things.
Yeah, well, that's the other interesting component, that we live in a plethora of information bombarding us, and the nature is to compare ourselves to an idea, or recognize there may be a variety of things that we could be doing to improve our performance.
Yeah.
What we oftentimes don't evaluate carefully is how many things I can do in order to reach my goals and whatever I'm in pursuit of. But I think we need to look at is how many things can I eliminate in pursuit? And I think we're at that tipping point inside of a digitally driven world where the amount of things you could do, there's not enough time, energy, capabilities, cognitive capacity to integrate all those things.
Right.
So can you implement, what is the tolerance level that I can have while keeping a quote unquote benefit cost ratio or to the consequences of trying to implement everything. So let's say maybe I want to do 10 things in my business, but really I can only implement 2 of those things in this quarter. So how do I figure out which 2 things are going to give me the most response and for the most effective efficiency? And then how do I push the 8 either the next quarter, next year, or eliminate them completely, or outsource them to someone else? And depending on where you are in the pursuit of that goal and your resources available is going to determine that process. But I think in order to do that, what we have to take is something I learned from JP Sears recently, the famous comedian who was really funny. I had him on my podcast.
No, did you?
Yeah. And I asked JP, I said, how is it that you're so prolific in the production of your comedy? I mean, comedy is pretty it's a pretty intense process. You've got to figure out, you know, kind of something that would be humorous, look at things. And so there is a tremendous amount of volume of this production in his life. I said, how do you do that? And he says, I plan what he called white spaces, blank spaces in his life, where his calendar had literally space for him to not do anything, but to just walk around, think, or whatever. And so I incorporated that into my own life. I was like, well, that seems like a good idea. Let me try that. And so I changed around my schedule. I told my assistant that I was doing my fitness training at a certain time in the afternoon, when in fact I'm actually getting up and getting it in early. I'm getting it early in the day before I'm on the schedule. And then that space, because she's not filling it and I'm not taking it, it's seen as a workout time, but it's actually a space time for me. So the calendar looks good from her standpoint. It looks good from my standpoint, but I've had these free spaces. And in those free spaces, I go for a walk at the beach. I go down to do a recovery thing at the Bulletproof Labs. Sometimes I just sit here and chill out and shoot pool with my friends or talk to a friend. And I've become more creative and more capable, and my companies have done better than they've ever done before. And it feels easier.
That is awesome. You know, I wrote that down, plan white spaces. And I think that's a key indicator to the previous point is the value of the internet is that you've learned about a lot more things out there, but there's no regulator, there's no filter to discern what's appropriate for me. And then you see all the candy coated aspects of it. And then you're like, and FOMO, fear of missing out.
Oh yeah. Oh man, did you get the latest episode? And your buddy says, did you see Superhuman the other day and what he was talking about? You know, and it's like, I got to watch another video, right? And then you're in voyeuristic nature.
Yep.
You're getting the dopamine loop. Oh, I learned this really cool neurological hack from Superhuman. Meanwhile, I'm sitting on my phone watching this. Well, my significant other is wondering why I'm not paying attention to it.
Exactly. Yeah. And you know, as a father of three, unfortunately, I have to admit, I've been guilty of that, where again, it's the good things and consuming information. But then also the other thing is, how many times have I consumed all these things from brilliant people and actually applied it in my life? And it's that action gap that you're kind of speaking to.
Yeah. Yeah. And so this is the big challenge of our life right now is being able to curate how much data you're coming in and how much you're outputting. And that ratio deals with performance. And we've got it backwards recently because it's so enticing to learn a new thing or a new skill. And, you know, this podcast is another example of people are listening to it or watching it. And so what I'm encouraging you guys to do when you hear this is take it from someone who's burnt out a couple of times on my performance parameters, is that becoming militant about your schedule and your input to output ratio. And then in between the input and the output needs to be connection with the people that you love and the recovery so that you can show up for those people as well as your performance goals at your best level, not feeling guilty and not feeling burned out. That's the optimal state that I think people are trying to dial in, and we're seeing more of it. People are becoming aware of it. We've hit the tipping point. Some people, we're going to lose them into the metaverse and they'll be gone, and other people will pull back for a greater sense of a human experience.
Yeah. Well, for one, I think that last minute was probably monumental talking point on reclaiming. So how do we circle back to the building blocks?
Yeah.
You mentioned three of them, what it's like the gut or nutrition. You've got the nervous system. There was a third one I'm drawing a blank on now. But how do we go back to that nutritional? Because there's the gut brain connection and it all, you know, so much of the immune system is in the gut. So how do we start that process of rebuilding, assuming a lot of folks listening are at or near burnout?
Well, first and foremost, I think we need to address a couple issues. Number one, EMF exposure, electromagnetic pollution and blue lights and electromagnetic frequency are significant. So a couple simple, easy things that you can do right off the bat. Number one, Turn off all your screens at least an hour and ideally 2 or 3 hours before you go to bed. Number 2, you can add blue light blockers. So blue light changes our circadian rhythms. Every living organism on the planet has circadian rhythms. Put your blue light blockers on, because a lot of us are interacting digitally, and that creates a stimulatory effect on the nervous system. Number 3, create a sleep ritual. If we look at the data, people are suffering from, it's particularly in the United States, of poor quality sleep. So shut off your Wi-Fi's if you're in the area. Some people have to, get rid of the dirty plugs, depending if there's going to be a variance between how sensitive you are to EMFs. Some people are super sensitive, some middle, some less. But get as many EMFs as you can out of your life. Reduce the lighting in your bedroom. Blue lights, alarm clocks, all these sort of things that have lights, get rid of them all. Shut off your phones, put them on airplane mode, all that sort of stuff, so you're not getting these upticks. Track your sleep. Have a sleep tracker like an Oura Ring or something like that, which will give you a little bit of data that you can go, what did I do? What did I not do? Don't eat before you go to bed. Give yourself 2-3 hours before you eat. Cut your stimulants off by early in the day. By midday, you do not want to be taking any more stuff. It's caffeination or any of the cognitive enhancers that people are now using today. So those things are very simple and easy things that you can implement right away.
Yeah.
Then you want to optimize your diet for your body. Now, some people like multiple meals a day. Some people like one meal a day. Some people like intermittent fasting. Figure out which one is best for you. And there's variance within genetics, a practitioner. I would say take a SpectraCell test and a hormone test.
SpectraCell?
SpectraCell is a nutritional test that tells how well you absorb and utilize vitamins and minerals and which ones you are deficient in. It's state of the art. It's way better than a blood test, the regular blood test. They spin your blood and you can see this. And so you can identify the nutritional deficiencies. And for me, that was magnesium, which actually is common, very common. And what's interesting about how overstimulation happens is we have these amazing channels, these calcium magnesium pumps inside our body. And when we're exposed to a lot of blue light and electromagnetic pollution, we input more calcium into the cell. And in order to change that, we need more magnesium and potassium. And particularly, most of us get enough potassium, but not enough magnesium, although some people don't get enough potassium. So by adding and ensuring that we have enough potassium and magnesium, we rebalance that, and we tend to be able to calm down. We move out of fight or flight into rest and relaxation.
Okay.
You move into rest and relaxation. This is where you get more regenerative recuperation. So you can sleep 8 hours, or you can sleep 6 hours, or you can sleep 10 hours. A person who can get into this regenerative state, sleeping 6 hours, will feel more rested than the person at 10 hours. So if you're a performance hawk, like many of us are that are listening to it, if you've been burned out, you're probably a performance hawk, then you can recognize this. How do I improve the performance of every single facet? Okay, how do I exercise in a way that I get maximum efficiency from metabolic factors? Regulates blood sugar, my triglyceride levels are lower, my blood pressures go, my waist size is of the appropriate level based on my age and my height. If you have those parameters built into your exercise routine, you can design an exercise routine that gives you maximum benefit with minimal liabilities and minimal overstimulation of the nervous system. So choosing the right training modalities for your body and your lifestyle that makes you feel good, makes you feel energized, as opposed to, like for me, how I train is evolving a lot. Now I'm spending more time on mobility. I have a guy that comes in here twice a week to work on uncorking tight muscles and stuff. I'm 50 years old. It's not like I was when I was 25. Right. I'm changing the output of my training volume. So I train quite frequently because I like to train and it makes me feel good, but I've lowered the volume and I've lowered the intensity of my workouts. And that's allowed me, and I'm in fantastic shape. It's, since probably the best shape I've been in 10 years, by doing less and doing it more efficiently. And that's counterintuitive. You think, well, I should train harder or diet. No, I'm actually doing less and getting more from it because I'm working within my recovery modalities. Same thing at work. I'm working literally half the amount of time I was 4 years ago in my burnout. And my companies have, since that point, have 10x'd in value.
Wow.
Okay. So
Wow.
I got a 10x in value doing half the work in half the time. I'm in better shape than I was. And I feel better than I was because I've been implementing these. Now we've gone deeper. I supplement with a lot of magnesium and B12 because those are two areas that I'm very deficient in. Magnesium is very calm. That's the calming effect one. Looking at your hormones. So particularly as women go through menopause,
You're right.
or men go through male menopause.
Andropause,
Right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Or manopause, as I like to call it.
Yeah, menopause. Well, you have to recognize that shifts in your hormonal state. So if you are in a stressed out mode, you produce more cortisol.
Mm-hmm.
Now that cortisol can go one of two ways. About 80% of the time, it'll generate more estrogen in the body. That gives you the beer belly, that gives you the less drive, the kind of softness, all that sort of stuff. In 20% of the population, it'll go to for men, it'll drive more testosterone production, which you would want. But over a prolonged period of time, it leads to the degeneration of the nervous system and hormonal output. So regulating your cortisol component, these down regulators, morning sun in the morning to recalibrate. I'll get up and do my meditation outside in the sunshine here in California. If you're in a dark place, red light therapy. I also have a red light sauna I get into in the morning where I turn on the red lights and get a good sweat going, and that light pours into me and my body heats up and I feel tremendous doing that. And then having things that down regulate the nervous system in the evening to get you relaxed. I've got a variety of PEMF devices, NanoV, and then brain tap devices, things like that, things that kind of shut my brain off, get me into a relaxed, calm state. And once I'm in that state, I work on not reactivating, stay away from the violent movies, stay away from the stimulation, stay away from the eating, read a book, keep the lights down low, put on some more. And as you're regulating through this, you start to get feedback, and then the process becomes addictive. Now it's like, oh, I can improve this a little bit more. So you can start using the same mentality for excellence to drive excellence in the recovery, and then your result is guaranteed.
Yeah, that's great. Great advice. The last point on the movie, I noticed that recently, where I'm sure, we all still get out of whack a little bit.
Sure.
But doing those practices, you see, I think when you enhance your practice like that you're talking about, you then see the negative impact more severely when you get off the rails, and then it, to me, amplifies the need for the guardrails or the boundaries to maintain that healthy lifestyle. Because we watched something, stayed up a little bit too late watching it, and it was a pretty intense movie or series. And I'm like, I can't go to bed now. I was just tense. Like I could feel it in my body. And I'm just like, this is not the forecast of bad night of sleep, but it was like, I'm probably not going to sleep well. So I just knew, don't worry about the scores. It's going to be low.
And I'll take one other opportunity here too. I think it's important to recognize if you're a high performer, and I would suspect you are, and I would suspect that the listeners here who are led to burnout are probably more on the high performer side. Then you want to be able to up the efficiency and output during your other time as well, so that you can say, I've earned my recovery. Because oftentimes there's a psychological component that, hey, I can't take the time off.
It's a great point.
So how do you enhance the efficiency of your output side? So I've hired a number of coaches to assist me in putting in the guidelines and guardrails for my own self. Mm-hmm. And I've instructed my assistants to maintain those parameters for how I communicate in the outside world. I eliminated my social media. My social media is run through a group, so I'm not in the scrolling prone, because I know I'm prone to it. I'll just scroll till I drop.
Yep.
So outside of that, I don't miss it. And I've spent more time on deeper conversations with the people I love instead of surface communications from social media. I'll pick up the phone and I'll call them. Now, there is a piece where you will feel a little bit less connected, and you have to be okay with that. I don't have a lot of surface-based connections now. The connections are deeper and longer and more fulfilling. And it's been wonderful to reconnect into that depth of connection with humanity that I'm really enjoying, and I think you'll really enjoy. But then on the other side of it, we also developed a variety of cognitive enhancers to address 3 areas that deal with burnout. So in burnout, you have to identify what is your dominant neurochemical group. So most people who are subject to burnout are going to be dopamine, acetylcholine dominant. Okay. It's gold medalists, performers, CEOs, and executives tend to be on that side. If you're in, GABA or serotonin, you're probably an artist or a caregiver or something like that. So you can take a Braverman test online, or you can go to one of our sub-brands, Newtopia, and do a test where you can ascertain where your neurochemical dominance is. So once you understand your neurochemical dominance, you can say, okay, the feeling of burnout is that we're not able to manufacture enough neurotransmitters for our central nervous system and brain so that we can replenish those in a way that allows us to perform at the levels that we'd like to. Or the other thing is that we get depleted. So there's dominance, there's depletion, and there's deficiency. So depletion happens, for example, which is prolific amongst children who are on social media so much that every time that you turn on that loop, or you get a text message, or you get a feedback from social media, you get a dopamine response and you react it. And so what people are depleting is their dopamine levels, and now they don't feel motivated to go to the gym, or they don't feel motivated to take action on the thing they do because they're in depletion.
Yep.
So whatever neurochemical that you have a lot of, or that you're most dominant, is what you're most likely deplete. So you need to be able to implement the behaviors and the nutrition that is going to support your neurochemical dominance. The third piece is, and this goes back to your digestive component, and that is deficiency. Many people do not experience the full range of emotional and cognitive abilities because they're deficient in a variety of neurochemicals. For example, serotonin, which is a connectedness, feel good, that's the opposing aspect of depression. And we have 15% of the population that are depressed. What does depressed mean? It means that you're not able to produce enough of the neurochemicals that allow you to feel happy or connected or normal. 95% of your serotonin is made in your gut, and is made by a specific group of bacteria that convert proteins concerned into amino acids, which are formed into neuropeptide chains that make these neurochemicals. And what we've been able to identify is that if you provide your body with these key probiotics and the right prebiotics with them, in other words, you feed them properly in combination with addressing the deficiencies in your mineral content, particularly magnesium, very high in the formation of neurochemicals, B12, B vitamins, B6. These, you provide those, proliferate your intestinal tract with those probiotics, those precursors, making sure you're getting the high quality proteins that get digested into amino acids and converted over into those neuropeptide chains. All of a sudden people feel switched on, and they feel relaxed, or they feel recovered, or they have a full range of neurochemical capabilities and possibilities that they lost during the burnout.
Right.
And so what we can do is we can actually turbocharge our recovery by providing essentially more trucks and more workers to the manufacturing of the neurochemicals that led to the depletion or deficiency in her. So whether it was depletion of or deficiency of, we can address those through the gut and brain, the gut-brain axis, so that we can optimize it. And then we can actually provide the specific neurochemical cocktails on a daily benefit that will enhance creativity, focus, connectivity. And we partnered up with, we call him Mr. Newts. He's a neurochemist who was able to crack those codes because of his own family's bipolarity and neurochemical deficiencies. He was motivated for it. And we built a company around that, which we now have literally no bad days.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So we went after it. So the good thing that happened was severe burnout for myself and my business partner, and we figured it out and built products and services as well as processes in order to help people address neurochemical burnout and move into neurochemical optimization, where you do have that increased capability while building in the recovery side of things.
That's kind of the panacea, right? That we're trying to get it all in balance, as everyone talks about, and being able to do all the things. I lost my train of thought. I was going to ask on that last piece, but so that last company you mentioned, is it all part of BiOptimizers? Or?
Yeah, so that company's called Newtopia.
Okay.
It's Playground for Your Mind, and it's been our latest offering. It's just to give you an idea about that. I mean, we started that company, we started using Mark's products about 9 months ago. Yeah, probably about 9 months ago. And we were able to, and we put our whole executive team on the process, and we were able to triple our company's size in a year, and it felt less. And we were able to do that largely because we were able to do more effectively and then have that recovery time on combination. So it wasn't just the Newtopia product, which are amazing. They're totally game changers as far as it's customized nootropics for individual brains. We actually take people through a process, and
wow.
Yeah. So we're the first commercially available customized nootropic formulation, because no other nootropic company was addressing neurochemical individuality. And we're continually improving that process through our app, which people are putting in their feedback, which is allowing us to tweak and customize formulations on mass and then individually as well. So we're seeing more data points and more points so that we can dial in people's responses even better. And it's only going to get better. So that's one side of it. But then the other side of it, we wrote a book called Sick to Superhuman and BiOptimizers, which were also helping people identify these things that are outside a product type that can solve their problems. But these are practice-oriented things that people can implement and do. And as well as, where do they go for the data points? Where do you get the information so that you can make lifestyle modification that will help you achieve your goals? And so you can go to Amazon and get that, or go to our website. And then foundationally, I give away a free course on BiOptimizers, which is called the Awesome Health Course, which took 30 years of my industry experience and put it in a sequential format called the Awesome Formula, so that people could put the first principles. What do I need to spend the most time and energy on, in what order? So, we go air, we go water, we go exercise, which are the 3 non-negotiables. Then we get into sunlight, we get into optimizers, we look at mental beliefs and attitudes, and then we look at education, testing, coaching. How do you monitor it? How do you get help around it? And how do you test so that you know where you are at any given time and whether you're improving or deproving, right? And once you have that in place as an overall functionality, then the world's your oyster, and you can tweak the machine the way that you want, and your life completely changes. And that's why we're becoming well known as what they call a biological optimization company. How do we optimize your individual biology to achieve the goals that you want without burning out and navigating a rapidly technologically advancing world without losing our humanity? Yeah. That's the goal in our operational parameters, and we love doing it.
And that last part is a key one, is like, how do you live what I've heard, an integrated lifestyle with technology? Like, recognize, like, it's here, we're able to do this. We're doing the East Coast, West Coast conversation. But how do you understand those boundaries and barriers? So it sounds like you guys are doing like a full, I'll call it the wellness wheel, a full spectrum of how to live this life well.
Yeah. And, Matt and I, for him and I, we run the company together. We follow completely different dietary philosophies. We have completely different ideas about the tech human interface, and how far we want that to go. We're almost polar opposites on both of those components.
Interesting.
But there's room for that. And I think there's value inside of that we're not attached to any one way. We're looking at a broad spectrum and allow the individual to determine how deep they want those integrations to go, right, and which things are more important to them as a human, and deciding, because we're all going to be faced, I think, in this generation with maybe the biggest Well, the biggest evolutionary step that's hit Homo sapiens history, and that is, at what level are we going to allow the integration with artificial intelligence?
Yeah.
And, we have genetic mutate capabilities now with CRISPR genes to mutate genetics or change genetic sequencing. And how deep do you want to go? Is it just around disease prevention, or is it into the generation of super people, or is it into, the X-Men files?
Right.
Right. And then what is the interface? We have Elon Musk building devices that connect into your nervous system, and people using chips and stuff like that. And then the data tracking devices and information sharing that goes on with that. And how deep do we want that to go? And what are the potential consequences? The Ray Kurzweil model of the singularity.
Yeah.
So we have to face these things, whether we like it or not. And the sooner we have that conversation with ourselves and with our family members of where we want to go and how deep we want the integration to be, or what depth do we say that's enough?
Yep.
That's a conversation that needs to be revisited regularly because of the advancement of technology. And the thing is with technology is the technology doesn't burn out, we do.
That's right.
There's no limit to the amount of information or things that can be sent to us. But that is a consumption-based model. And if you look at Adam Smith's model of what's made America so great, is that in order to produce the increase of value, you have to produce more than you consume. And we've got into the world of more consumption than production. And that disbalance shows up as burnout and dysfunction and dissatisfaction. And I think we found a ways around it, but we just need to talk about it.
Yeah. That's a great point in having those hard conversations to really get it out there and be able to wrestle through the solutions. And like you were saying with even your partner, there's a spectrum, but recognizing it has to be choice at some point. And just, again, more the guardrails or the boundaries that are appropriate.
And being okay with other people's choices that are polar opposite to yours.
Yeah.
And, if there's one thing I've learned in the 20 years working with Matt, is that we've learned to respect each other's differences. We certainly challenge them. And I think that's healthy. I think that's a healthy, you want to have healthy debates with that which are our opposites, but we don't want to condemn them to a tribalistic mentality. It's an us against them. It's they're doing their thing, I'm doing my thing. And from that, we might be able to learn a better way that we can all benefit from. And I think that's a better approach than to see division as an absolute amongst our friends, amongst our colleagues, amongst our families, amongst our political opponents in our neighborhoods. Is we got to get away from this polarization. Yeah. And get back into, hey, we truly are sharing this space together. And how do we find a space where we can all manage? Because if you yell, I saw a couple people yelling at each other today at the gym at 6 a.m. About the results of the Wittenhouse trial. And based on the conversation that they were having, or lack thereof, I could immediately see the data point or the source points where they were getting their information. So both parties were not able to recognize that this individual went through a trial, went through a decision, and a jury that heard the case, a judge has made a decision. Mm-hmm. These two people were arguing about that decision, and they were dealing with a fragment of the information that was presented to the jury of that person's peers, which I found very interesting on itself. So why is that? That's because of an overwhelming plethora of information from sources that are running not necessarily the truth, but a certain agenda. And it appears that agenda is division.
Yes. I would agree with you on that. It's not
so
really
how do we get
harmonious. Yeah. How do we get that back?
Yes. And so that's to recognize that we're all cells, part of the human family. And that human family extends into the past 10,000 generations and goes into the future 10,000 generations. So if we can consider ourselves as single cells of the same human body throughout all of time, and work towards a harmony within that, and recognize the differentiation between the cells is important as the differentiation between your bones and your brain. Everybody's got to do their piece, and they're all part of it. And rather than be diametrically opposed, is to say, well, that's interesting, and I am not quite sure I agree with your points, but I recognize you're entitled to them. And let's go along and have a workout or a conversation or something else that we can get along. And this Thanksgiving is a good time to consider that.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I, to that point, we're recording just before Thanksgiving, and it's a lot to give thanks for. The fact that we're able to have this conversation, the fact that you companies like yourself are out there advocating for the reclaiming of health, and doing it in a way that, with the advancement of technology, we're able to do it wiser, to get that personalization. So it's not a one pill fits all or a one shot fits all. It's prescriptive, because there, as you started out at the beginning of this conversation, there's a lot to consider that are influencers on it. And each one of us is, as I've always said, we're all walking chemistry sets, and we're just going to respond differently. You may get a cohort of common response, but even that in of itself, has not a flaw, but there's other ingredients involved. Well, Wade, I want to thank you for your insights, your expertise, and in what you're doing at BiOptimizers. I will say, I met your team at Biohacking Congress in Miami a few weeks back, and the chocolate smoothie sustained me for the weekend. I kept
awesome. Yeah, protein breakthrough. Yeah, it's an amazing plant-based protein. We just got the berry out.
Oh, really?
Which is made with real berries, dried berries. It's not artificial flavors. There's no fillers, no emulsifiers. There's no stabilizers. I believe, and I can say this unequivocally, since I've probably eaten more plant-based proteins than anybody else on the market, being a 20-year vegetarian. It is the best tasting plant-based meal replacement on the planet today, without a doubt.
Nice. Yeah, well, I will attest. I'm not saying it just because we're here. The chocolate's phenomenal. It's probably some of the best tasting I've ever had. And I've been able to get one of my kids to drink it, who were always looking for some kind of like nutritional supplementation or beverage to kind of add in there. And she loves it. So
that's awesome. I love hearing those stories. They make me happy. It's what I'm on this mission for.
That's awesome. I love the mission, and glad to be a small part of it and have you on here. I do like to close things out with a few personal questions, not too heavy. But what are you reading right now?
Jordan Peterson's 12 More Rules for Life.
Excellent book. What are you listening to right now? Music or podcast? Be it music or podcast.
I'm listening to a lot of podcasts. In particularly, I listen to Steve Bannon's War Room, Russell Brand's podcast. I forget what the name of it is, and Joe Rogan's podcast. And I feel that covers the full spectrum of political positions, since everything's been politicized. I want insight from all sides so that I'm better equipped to connect with people of differing political parties.
That's great. That's great. I think that's very wise. I've not checked out 2 of the 3, but I think I will. All right, last one. What is your go-to rest and recovery method?
Great. Meditation.
Meditation.
Yeah.
Got it. That's one thing I've not dabbled in too much, but I'm interested in. Breath work I've done a bunch, but
I'll give one more shout out. Recently, I just got an iCloud by a company called Nootropics. And I've got a lot of PEMF devices, and I don't know, they got a rest and recovery switch on this. And I've been using it over the last few days, and I've seen profound results in my deep sleep, in my recovery. And I've had a long-term shoulder injury that I've had for a year, which I've made more progress on it in the last week that I've been using this.
Really?
I don't know if it's correlative. I don't know if it's causative. All I can say, the only thing I've done different was that, and I'm craving it. So
nice. What was that called again?
It's a Centropics. It's called a Cloud, I think it's called, or whatever. A friend of mine, he made the company. He was with another PMF group. I was very impressed with it. So
cool. Awesome. Well, Wade, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. And thank you again.
You betcha. Take care. Thank you.